Welcome to another episode of See 'em Live. I'm Coleon Noir, and later on the show, we'll visit with the expert trainer Rob Pincus. But first, I want to talk about the fact that I caught the Vegas bug from SHOT Show, as usual. I thought I could skirt it this time around, and apparently none of my measures that I took into place worked. So now you get to listen to me talk through my nose for the next hour. With that being said, we're being joined today by the president of COM2A, Brent Carlton. How's it going, Brent?
It's going great. How are you? Other than your cold.
Yeah, I mean, other than my cold, everything is amazing. It's awesome. Besides the fact that I can't breathe, but yeah. But so what is COM2A?
COM2A is a 501c3 public charity. We are a nonprofit group here in Massachusetts, and we are essentially a legal action and legal education group. So we're out there challenging the laws in this state and the customs and practices of the police departments who regulate firearms possession in the Second Amendment, unfortunately, here. We also do some education and outreach to folks around here so that they understand not only their rights and responsibilities under the law, but also kind of how to navigate our kind of little system, our awkward little system of regulating firearms.
So how did the group get started? Like, what made you want to start the group? And I'm pretty sure you're the president of the group, so I'm pretty sure there was a number of individuals involved in the starting of this group, correct?
Yeah, we have a 5-member board now. It was really kind of 3 of us that just started it, and we actually kind of didn't want to do it. We were looking around, and we saw some of the civil rights litigation that was going around to support the Second Amendment, and we thought, boy, it's only going to be a matter of time before those lawsuits start up here in Massachusetts. And we realized they weren't going to happen. Nobody was doing it. Nobody was really interested in doing it. So we kind of stupidly look at each other and said, hey, we could do this.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
Gotcha. And I always find it interesting considering how pinnacle a place like Massachusetts was in many ways to the founding of the country, to where we are now, right?
Yeah, the irony is pretty deep, huh? Right?
Incredibly deep, almost painfully so. Go ahead, sorry.
So shot heard around the world, and if our politicians had their way, it would have been the last shot ever heard.
Yeah, it baffles me in many ways, and I'm still trying to understand how it got to. How do you think it got to the point where it is now in Massachusetts?
I can tell you kind of the legislative history and how this happened. I just don't know where the mindset went. I think a lot of it had to do with, we're a very, very blue state. We are more reliably blue than virtually any other state in the country, even sort of in California. And I think that just is part of that package, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we confuse too often rights and politics, right? We don't do that with the First Amendment, the Fourth, and the Fifth so much, but it's Second Amendment seems to be a lot more fair game for politics than the rest of the Bill of Rights. Yeah.
So it's what have you seen in what COM2A does? What has been kind of the biggest obstacles that you guys have faced up until this point?
Well, a couple obstacles. Just kind of the mechanics of getting plaintiffs and good plaintiffs is always a big challenge for it. But the courts and the case law here are really dead set against us. So we have, going back to 1976, we have a decision by our highest court in the state that said that the Second Amendment does not guarantee an individual right. And there's a lot of case law flowing from that just has not been able to be undone. We're chipping away at it bit by bit, but we only have one state court decision that I'm aware of that actually ruled that somebody's rights were violated under the Second Amendment. That's only happened once.
And for people who don't really quite understand why that's such a big conundrum when it comes to case law, it's a pain to make a case in court when you don't have much in the way of case law to support your position. You're kind of left going to more persuasive arguments, if anything else, while you have a judge who may or may not be lazy, somebody who may or may not be really paying attention to the issue and just will fall back on case law and just kind of continue the standard norm. Now, are you an attorney?
I am not an attorney.
Okay.
So, yeah, please do not make that confusion.
Yeah. but the organization does consist of a number of attorneys, obviously, correct?
Well, we have a group of attorneys that we work with, and
Gotcha. Okay.
some type of firearms practice experience. One of the folks is full-time practice does a full-time practice in firearms related law. And what we've done is we've gotten that group together and we've focused them and gotten them to network with each other. And as a result, we're building a much more competent bar.
Gotcha.
Or legal environment here for practicing of that law. They share best practices, they share what works, what doesn't work, and it's really starting to pay off.
Now, in saying that, what have you seen has been either from your own experience or from what they've told you have been the most effective tools to basically easing the legislation that has been passed in Massachusetts?
Well,
if any at all.
it isn't really. It's all case by case.
Yeah.
The big issue that these guys are involved with is appeals of licensing denial. So here you got to have a license just to own any firearm. And it's a discretionary license that's issued by one of 351 police chiefs.
Hold on, wait a minute. That's just to own it.
Just to own a gun.
We're not even talking, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I talk with my counterparts, at these things from time to time, and we all talk about, who's got it worse, and, we do that with Brian King.
Brothers in misery?
Yeah. But when you're denied that license, that discretionary license, and you go to court, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
And part of it is, you're familiar with, being a lawyer, you're familiar with the term burden shifting, right? The burden is shifted to the applicant to prove that the chief was wrong. Yeah. And so that's something we're going to be doing something with in the not too distant future, but I'm going to leave that for another time.
Which I think is utterly insane, because if I were to go out and murder someone right now, I don't really even have to put on a case that says I had a reason for doing it. The prosecution has to prove that I actually committed the murder. But yet, like you demonstrated just now, if I wanted to get a license, if I wanted to own a gun and I was denied it, now I have to prove why I need the gun.
Well, yeah, exactly, and it's based, unfortunately, more on need than qualification.
Yeah.
So you're expressing your First Amendment rights right now. You don't have to prove that you need to do it.
Yeah.
If the government wants to restrict speech or practice of religion, they always bear the burden of demonstrating a compelling public interest in having to do that. And it's just completely opposite when it comes to firearms in the state.
Now, what do you think they hang their hat on the most as to why they don't allow the same parallels when we're talking about the First Amendment versus the Second Amendment in Massachusetts?
Well, it's the thing you talked about. It's the lack of case law, right?
Uh-huh.
And to be fair to judges, this is a problem we all face, whether we're in California, New York, New Jersey, whatever, right? Judges like to hang their hat on the law and case law, and they like to be able to point to 1, 2, 3 other things and say, This is just like those, here we go. And there is no Second Amendment case law to speak of, not a lot, so they don't have a lot to use, and they're very, very reluctant to do anything new. And they're very deferential to the government if that case law isn't there for them.
Yeah, judges don't like to be appealed or overturned in any sense of the word. So
they don't like to cut new ground either.
Nope, they sure don't. Except when it's against the Second Amendment, of course. But,
well, that's just being safe on their part. But
okay.
Yeah.
Now, what is your shooting background like?
Well, I got into this. I'm primarily a competitive shooter. I shoot USPSA.
Okay.
You might be familiar with that. 3-gun. All the running gun kind of. Not all the running guns, but a lot of the running gun sports.
Okay. And how long had you been shooting? Is it something that's kind of always been in your life, or are you kind of like me? You were kind of new to it later on in life.
No, definitely later on in life, and in fact, we can blame the city of Boston for where I am now. I owned a gun, just a single handgun, like a lot of people do. And when the mandatory licensing thing came in, I had to go get my license. So I figured, I got to be right. And at the time, they wanted you to belong to a gun club or a range, and so I said, well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well do something fun with a gun. One thing leads to another, and now I'm suing them.
Yeah, gotcha.
If they hadn't had that stupid rule, we wouldn't be here.
Now, how long have you lived in Massachusetts? Have you been there your whole life, or are you a new?
All my adult life. I've been here since about 80, 81. 81. Came here from college, all that.
And so the culture of guns in Massachusetts, has it always been the way it is now, or has there been a shift that you were able to see?
Well, the shift that I've seen in the last few years has been a positive shift.
Okay.
And I think in the country at large and here we are definitely seeing a renormalization of gun ownership. Much to the chagrin of people like our Attorney General here, we know demonstrably that there are more gun owners in Massachusetts. Licenses are up by 15 or 20% every single year for new licenses.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really great thing.
No, that's an awesome thing. I honestly surprised me with that answer. I thought you were going to talk about how it was 10 times worse, like how it was pretty decent before, and now it's 10 times worse. So,
well, no, it's getting better. The police chiefs are better about issuing licenses than they have like 20, 30 years ago. Some used to just deny everybody a license.
yeah.
We have restricted licenses, which is you can't carry, but you own it. And very few are actually restricted, and the number of restricted licenses is going down every year. So apart from what we're doing, the trend is definitely going in the right direction. People don't always believe that because it doesn't seem like that.
Exactly.
When you look at the numbers, that's exactly what's happening.
And that's a good thing. I'm actually glad to hear that. I'm tired of hearing the doom and gloom that typically accompanies a lot of states like Massachusetts when we talk about gun rights. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk a bit more with Brent about some of the cases he and COM2A are working on after this.